So we'll get going. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second installment of our online seminars. I'll go through a couple of things first, and then we'll get into the main event, if you will. So this is our second one. Let me just pull up. I thought I had it up, so I apologize, but I'll pull up the other seminars so that I can kind of go through the other ones that we're going to do. We had an excellent one last week with Kevin Lunny and Pat Magyar on the recent, kind of recent trench collapse in Bethel that really opened up a lot of eyes to, possibilities of what, can definitely happen around here. And, we went through kind of the operations of that, things that went well, things that didn't go well. And it was very eye-opening for me. And I think a lot of people that, tuned in to be able to see it. That's available on our YouTube channel. So if you want to check that out, you're more than welcome to. Next week, we're going to do, I realize it kind of seems like everyone's doing them now, but it's something I've actually been planning for probably 6 to 8 months or so, and just getting into it now is a little bit about the batteries and what we're going through. I have and many people have a firsthand view of it. We're really going to stay away for the most part from cars and ESSs for the most part, and really just stick to the basics or the smaller types of batteries. So I'm hoping to get a couple guests for that evening as well. And that's going to be January 26th, I believe. And then January 31st, I'm just reading the notes on my phone. We're going to go bailout and rope with Matt Hunt from Sterling. So he'll be joining us online, and we'll go through pretty much anything anyone wants to do with Sterling. And then the last one for the year is going to be February 15th. And it's going to be a modified version of my Without a Hose Line class. So it's not really going to be a class. I'm going to go through what the class is, what we talk about in it, and hopefully some stats and figures. One of the things that one of the stats I just recently saw for 2022 is that no one died, or every fireman that died inside of a burning structure had a hose line with them. So as much as we like to, and I'm not saying we're not going to stretch lines, and we'll get into that more that night, but if you go by the data, every fireman that died last year in a structural fire had a hose line with them. So what is killing firemen, and what can we do to keep us safe without a hose line? So we'll talk about that, or as safe as possible. So we'll talk about that. I'm kind of going off on that tangent, which I'm not going to do tonight. So without further ado, and we'll get into some stuff later, but without further ado, let me welcome Mike Gardella, fireman, friend, co-business owner, a lot of different titles. So Mike, before we even get into the business side of it, just give us a quick introduction on yourself, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me. Well, a little bit of us. We started in 72. My father started a business to do radios on the side while he was working Sikorsky, and decided to go full time. And I wasn't smart enough to get out of the business early on. So now I'm stuck here with him, but it's all good. So we've been, like I said, since 72. We're Kenwood and ICOM dealer. We also provide Harris as well. And we provide systems from small businesses up into large industrial fire departments and city fire departments. Full dispatch consoles, repeater systems, voting systems, and full vehicle upfitting, MDTs, recorders, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, we're going to get into that tonight, obviously. And tonight, for kind of my thought on how we're going to go is, the topics that I had in mind are going to be, we're going to go over the different frequencies that are out there. We're going to talk about digital versus analog, a little bit of that, some of the new technology and features in radios, programming, how that goes into it. We're not just buying radios at Radio Shack, plugging them in and going to work. So some of the background on that. Talk about, I have it listed as Mayday, 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 but really what I want to get into is the programming on what happens when you hit that emergency alert button. And I know we're very specific in New York on how that works, but I want to talk about the different options that are out there for departments. We're also going to talk about the possibilities of recording fireground communications, because that's a question that I've had, and repeating fireground communications. And when we get to those, I'll kind of go through everything that I have on the list here are things, A, that I don't really know, and B, that I've been asked before. So that's kind of how those come up. And then obviously, if there's anything you guys want to see other than that, please put it in the chat window right now, or at any point throughout tonight, so that I can make sure that we touch on it. Otherwise, those are going to be the topics that we're kind of going to stick to. But I'm happy to veer off from that and get into any topics that we want. So, we'll start off, Mike, different frequencies. So UHF, VHF, I don't even know what else there is out there.
Well, it used to be low band back in the day.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, when I joined, it was 3356 in Trumbull Center, and that's what we had. Actually, I believe they just got rid of that a few years ago. So,
yeah.
So what are the different frequency ranges? What are the advantages, disadvantages, and where do you see most departments going these days with them?
Well, UHF and VHF have always been around. Predominantly 800 meg is more pushing in due to the fact of, like, in Connecticut here, we have the state radio system, which is 7-800. People are migrating over to the state radio system for interoperability purposes and things such as that. But UHF, VHF, UHF gives you good penetration, which we use in the city. Doesn't give you as much range as VHF, but we're all not going to honestly notice that in the fireground setting. Urban versus rural, VHF is going to work better in non-concrete steel buildings, where UHF is going to work better in concrete and steel buildings.
And so, just the way it was in Trumbull, and I know some other departments maybe, is it was low band, but that was just for apparatus to apparatus. But then
Correct.
Inside, once you took off your portable radio inside, you were on a higher band, whatever it was, VHF or UHF, for the penetration.
The beauty of your low band was it didn't need as much infrastructure because it went far. Higher power, went further, you needed less infrastructure. But then again, it didn't give you the new technologies weren't available for low bands, just because everyone was migrating to UHF and VHF. So you have more infrastructure as you go up in frequency, just because the distance decreases that the signal travels. So yes, you go UHF or VHF on a fireground, and you would use a crossband repeater to go back to your low band. That's the way it was back in the day. And actually, we're seeing that come back again with operating on UHF on a fireground and going over to a repeater to go back out and say, like, the state Connecticut radio system. People are doing that, so dispatch can actually hear the firegrounds, or incoming units can hear the fireground on their TAC channel or whatever talk group they may be on. So that is actually coming back again, just in a different form, with a lot more technology, being able to send the fireground audio along with their IDs, which is a big part. The people want to see who's keying the radio, which will in turn and come into the Mayday portion when we talk about it. Like I said, in urban environment, you're going to see more UHF. Even in your 800 meg, people will still operate on the fireground on that, but predominantly you see in the urban environment, it's UHF.
Is there downsides to operating on the UHF or VHF or 800 on fireground? Or, I mean, what's the difference between UHF and 800 and that type of stuff? I have no idea.
It's just frequencies. You're in the 450s, 460s. In your cities, you can operate in the 470s. 800 meg is up in the 800s. In the state radio system operates between 760 and like 860, I think. And in your VHFs are your 150s, 160s range. So the frequency is what the difference is.
And is there a difference, penetration, distance, infrastructure?
Yeah, your VHF will go further than UHF, and UHF will go a little further than 800 meg. And it comes down to penetration in the building. Steel and concrete, UHF does better than VHF. VHF works well better in outside environments. And your more wood frame structures.
Okay. So so I think that kind of delves into analog versus digital. So you hear that term, what's the difference? How do they work? Is that the right terminology, or is there a better term?
Your analog and digital is how your voice is, what's done with your voice. Your cell phones are all digital. So when we speak on analog, it's taking your voice and sending it back over just the way it is on the radio frequencies. When it goes digital, it's turning it into ones and zeros. So in analog, you're going to get scratchy. Everybody hears that. When you're talking, it starts getting scratchy. You're getting further away, your signal's degrading. Digital, ones and zeros. When those ones and zeros disappear, so does your signal. You do get more distance with digital. You'll usually get, I think it's 20% more. But once that 20% more disappears, so does your signal.
So how does that translate to on the fireground? Are we using digital in the fireground?
It all depends on the preference of the department, what they want to do. Some people want to stay analog for one, interoperability, and two, they don't trust digital on the fireground. That's just some department preferences.
Is that a reasonable distrust?
It has been in the past. It's getting better. We have customers who are on digital on everything because they're encrypted. So that is another route, because they have to, if they want to be encrypted, they have to be in digital. You can't do encryption in analog anymore.
Okay.
So digital is honestly just what the department wants to go with. Most of our customers are analog. We are analog in the city on the fireground. Some of my customers said are digital and encrypted.
Is there so the horror stories I've heard in the past, and again, this may just be, you hear horror stories about, you can make up anything, was someone inside of a building transmitting maybe a mayday or something important, and no one on the fireground heard him or her, but the dispatcher heard him or her, or the buff with his scanner heard him or her because of how the digital. Is that legit or no? You could say no.
It all depends on how the system is set up. That goes back to the fireground. How are you doing your fireground? Are you doing fireground simplex, or are you doing fireground repeated?
That's right, so that wasn't on our schedule, but let's get into that, because I think
honestly, that's where it's going to go to, because I can guarantee on simplex that the guy 50 feet away from me, 100 feet away from me, is going to hear my mayday, hear my transmission.
So define simplex.
Simplex is this transmit and receive on the same frequency.
Okay.
So if I'm transmitting on channel 1, it's the same exact frequency. So say it's a VHF frequency, it's 154. I'm transmitting and receiving on the same frequency. So when I transmit, the guy 50 feet, 100 feet away from me is going to hear me transmit. When you go repeated, you are transmitting and receiving on two separate frequencies. You're relying on a system to get that signal, receive that signal, and retransmit that signal. Now, RF is radiation. So everything that it impacts affects its distance. It degrades the signal every time you transmit, whatever you're going through. Just putting the radio next to your body degrades the signal, because your body's mostly made of water. And as soon as you put that antenna next to your body, it detunes the antenna. That's the fallacy of it's the speaker mic that messes with your signal. Has nothing to do with the speaker mic. If you take that radio away from your body, your signal magically gets better. And we've all seen that. That's because you're getting the antenna away from your body. So that rolls into going through a system. That signal, if you're transmitting at 5 watts of power, by the time it gets out of the building, it's not 5 watts of power. So that signal is being beat down every single time it impacts something. And if your system isn't designed for in-building coverage, which is sometimes very difficult to do in terms of not having the funds to do it, there's no guarantee that I can get that signal out of that building every single time. I can guarantee the guy 50 feet away from me is going to hear me, 100 feet away from me, but I can't guarantee that dispatcher is going to hear that. So that's where a lot of that in the beginning, when people went digital, they were putting into systems. And that was a big thing, I think, back in the late 80s and 90s, that everybody was relying on the systems and they want the dispatchers to hear everything. Well, sometimes that didn't work because the system wasn't designed. Because you can't say that you're in a basement somewhere, just in a regular private dwelling, a single basement, that signal is going to get out and get to the dispatcher. Now you start talking, you go into a steel or concrete building, you go 1 or 2 sub levels down, that signal is not getting out to the dispatcher because there's not enough signal strength to it.
So now when you say duplex or repeated, where is it getting repeated from? So if you're talking on 2 different channels, where is it getting repeated from, the apparatus or somewhere else?
Sometimes, yes. There are some departments now are operating on, like I said, a fireground channel, which is simplex, and going into the repeater, which is going back out onto another different frequency on a dispatch or a talk group and going back to the dispatcher. But they're still talking on simplex on the firegrounds.
But if they're on, what's the other one? Duplex, you said?
Repeated, yeah, duplex.
Repeated. Yeah. So if they're doing that, where is it getting repeated?
The signal goes out to a receiver somewhere in the town. Most places have multiple receivers around town, and that signal gets voted by a system and then sent back out. Whatever the best audio comes in as, it goes back out. Some towns also have, instead of having one transmitter, they'll have multiple, be a simulcast system. So all the transmitters will come up at the same time and flood the area with signal.
And that's where theoretically you could have 2 people next to each other that would not hear each other on the radio because he's not transmitting to the other guy's radio. He's transmitting to the repeater, and then the repeater's got to come back.
And if the repeater gets a signal, it gets retransmitted. If it doesn't get the signal, it doesn't get retransmitted.
Right. Okay.
So that's where people get jammed up sometimes.
Do you still see departments putting in those types of systems?
We've seen a migration more towards the actual Fireground simplex channels.
Yeah, and then if they want to repeat it, they'll just repeat it in the apparatus or something like
Correct,
that.
using some type of crossband repeater. There's multiple platforms out there for it, but that's what some people are going to.
If anyone has any questions on that stuff, please put them in. Otherwise, let's talk about some of the new technology and features. So I don't know, you tell me. I mean, I know we changed radios at work a few years ago and the prices are astronomical on them. So
The features are sometimes they seem like they're endless lately. You can get everything, but it all comes at a cost. I know the NFPA is coming out with a new standard. Harris, Kenwood, and Motorola are all coming out with radios to meet the standard. I haven't seen a lot of the features yet because most people don't have the money for it. You're talking the new Harris portable is tremendous. It offers a lot of features, but also comes with a price. Same thing with the Motorola and the Kenwood. They all offer a lot of features, but most features we're never going to use because they start getting too complicated. Some of the cool things are coming out with Bluetooth into the face piece, which would be nice instead of having to scream through your face piece. You'll have a microphone in your face piece that'll Bluetooth to your radio. Again, you just got to make sure you Bluetooth your radio to your face piece every single time. Right. Such things as cut cords, they'll come out with your cord is compromised. They'll alert you to that. So that way, you know, hey, my radio's not going to work because my cord is messed up. If it burned through or cut or a snag, something like that. They're coming out with temperature sensors now in the radios too. So command could actually see what's going on with the radio and actually see what's going on with the individual, what the temperatures are, what their heart rate is. All that stuff is coming down the pipe, but we just haven't seen it yet.
Is there anything noteworthy in the new NFPA standard that would pertain to departments that you can think of, or nothing all that crazy?
I mean, the radios we have now are all the APXs and the Kenwoods. They're all pretty close to the standard, I think. But how much more stuff can you shove into a radio for us to actually use while we're crawling down a hallway? If it works, it transmits every single time. The emergency buttons are programmed the proper way. The radios are tuned properly. Audio settings, that's huge. As long as they're operating properly, you can't really cram too much more on the individual to have to worry about.
And then when we talk about some of that technology and whatnot, I know there was maybe it was last generation, but you were showing some videos at one point of how they worked with background noise. You want to just talk about that?
Audio settings are absolutely the key when it comes to providing good communications to the individuals.
So we can get into there with programming too. So when I buy this Harris radio, this Kenwood, aside from putting in the right frequency, what goes into programming radios?
We spend sometimes as much as 8 hours with a customer just using the radios and letting them play with them and them telling me what they like and what they don't like. And I want to hear what you don't like because that'll allow me to change the auto settings for noise environments. How you're using them is key. The old school days of just keying the microphone down at your chest, those days don't work. And it's a very hard thing to teach people to do. You have to give the radio strong audio signal because they're noise canceling. Some have 2 microphones on them. Some have upwards of 5 microphones on them, grabbing audio from every direction and picking the best audio that it's going to retransmit and block out everything else. So when you put the microphone just at your chest and you key to radio and you speak going forward, you're not giving it good audio. It's getting all the bad audio instead of getting your audio. So you need to speak into that microphone and give it good, strong audio. Just like you say, put it on your voice emitter. That's the same thing. But if you don't have your face piece on, you've got to get it right in front of your face, or at least turn into it to get that good, strong audio.
Otherwise, it thinks your background.
You're going to get the background's going to be retransmitted. And the same thing goes around other individuals. At work, we always put our hand over our speaker mic. That still holds true, but it's because most people aren't giving the radio good, strong audio and talking into the speaker mic. They're, yelling in a different direction or not even talking loudly. That's one major key when it comes to it. And programming can't fix that. Because if you start jacking up mic gains, now it's going to grab all the noise and give you worse audio by jacking up mic gains. And in reverse, if you lower your output audio of the speaker mic, Now you're doing yourself a disservice because we always complained we can never hear our speaker mics. Well, we gave us nice, big, strong speakers now, but now we're dumbing them down by lowering the output audio to compensate for people not using the speaker mics properly. So you have to find that happy medium with programming and training to get the best audio quality out of your speaker mic.
So what kind of stuff can you program into it? I mean, what
Oh,
audio stuff?
it's just you have mic games, you have audio, you have different audio settings for the actual. You can actually dive down into the frequencies that it will allow to pass through or to reject. You can get pretty deep into those settings, but then how deep can you get if you're not giving it the proper audio it needs? No
Yeah.
program in the world is going to make it work properly.
Okay. So
That's a big
along,
thing.
no, absolutely. So along with programming, I had Bluetooth listed on there. So have you tried that? Does it work? I've heard some horror stories of pairing, but I don't know if you have any experience with it.
We've used it some people want the speaker mic without the cord. That's a nice thing to have, and they pair up fine. But it's the same thing as your phone. Every now and then it might drop it and you got to reprogram it. So it kind of sucked to have to try to reprogram this thing when you're trying to go to work.
Right.
And plus we're firemen, so we're probably going to lose it.
Right.
So it's better to have it attached.
So you're saying that they actually have remote speaker mics that are wireless. That's what you're referring to. Okay. Because I know some of the manufacturers for SCBA are putting like voice emitters in or voice amps in that are Bluetooth as well. And I've heard mixed on how those pair to
It comes down to in the morning, checking your stuff, make sure it's paired up properly the right way. And
so probably right now, career only. It's not going to work in a volunteer.
Because you have to, because it has to be paired to the radio at the same time. Because now the SCBA is also give an identification of a position. So you have to make sure that radio is the proper radio for that position at the beginning of the day. Because you don't want to be giving, when the emergency button's transmitted, you don't want to be getting mixed signals and getting two different identifications.
Right. So on that note, again, anyone have any questions or topics, please put them in. I think it's worth delving into the Mayday side of it. And I know we spoke about this a lot. So there's that orange button. I bet most people know it as the Mayday button, and that's about where the knowledge ends. So how do you see departments setting those up? What can they do? What can't they do? What's your opinion? Go.
One of the two biggest things is you want it silent or you want it audible. Some places like police departments leave it at silent. That way, if they're in trouble, they hit it. It doesn't alert people around them. I have had departments before that had it on silent because they figure they're an EMS run, they get in trouble, they can't talk, they hit their button, now it transmits out. I have seen pretty much everybody go over to audible alarm. That way, the way it's programmed, when you hit that button, everyone who is receiving that signal is going to get an emergency alert. They're going to get a beacon, they're going to get an alert tone across their radio, and it's going to let them know, hey, somebody just hit their EAB. It'll also identify on the radio. Now that comes into play also is how it's programmed. A lot of places say, I want my dispatcher to hear it. Well, that's great. That comes back to, again, is that signal going to get out? Back to the dispatcher, back through the repeater, I should say. I'd personally rather have the people who's standing 50 feet, 100 feet away from me on a simplex channel hear me transmit that alert tone. I don't care about somebody sitting in a dispatch center, maybe a couple counties away. I care about the guys on scene who are going to hear me transmitting that emergency message.
On that note, can they both hear it? I mean, can you do something where it's both or no?
No. So what it depends on how the radio is programmed. So if say you have your dispatch channel, you have a fireground channel. Some people say, well, we're going to operate in a fireground channel. But if I hit my emergency message, I want it to go back to the dispatch. Well, now if that happens, no one in the fireground is going to know you transmitted that emergency message because only the dispatcher's hearing it. And they have to rely on a dispatcher now calling command on a separate frequency to say, hey, this person just transmitted an emergency message. And what happens then is your radio now shifts to that frequency, and now you're off frequency completely for the fireground activities.
Do you have departments that choose to do that?
There are some people that used to do that, yeah, and we've migrated them over to doing it on whatever channel you're on. That's your channel it's going to transmit on, because that goes into play too. Also, if you go mutual aid to another town, you have their frequency in their radio. You switch over to their channel, you hit your emergency message. If it's programmed to go back in your dispatch, now no one in the fireground is going to know you transmitted that message. And there's no guarantee, again, that your dispatch channel works in a town you're operating in.
Right. So if you go 3 towns over, you may not.
There's a chance it's not going to work. So that's why we push to have it on whatever channel you're operating on. that's the channel that your emergency message goes out on.
Okay, so that's kind of like what we have in the city where no one
Correct.
else hears it other than right around there. But if you had a setup where you were, on the talk around, you hit your Mayday and it goes around the talk around, can you also repeat it out or no? Can it
Through
do
the,
both?
yes, through those, the more advanced crossband, more vehicle repeat,
Okay.
advanced vehicle repeaters,
Right.
you can, such as the future comms that Motorola has, those will retransmit that back out onto whatever channel selected on the radio.
Okay. All right. And then beyond that, identification. So every radio has display now. So what do you see departments generally identifying their radios as? 1, 2, 3, or 4, or what?
It all depends on the type of department. Career departments, obviously everybody's identified position, rig and position. Industrial departments, you'll see them identified as a personnel. Police departments identifying as a badge number with a name as well. Volunteer departments just as a rig number, and whether A, B, C, or D. A lot of them don't necessarily put them as positions, irons, or can. They'll just identify them as A, B, or C.
Okay. And then kind of jumping a little bit back and forth, but if you have a department that has, right now, maybe, let me even back up a little bit more. Do you see most departments in the area changing to a fireground channel, or are they using the same channel as what their dispatch was? But what's the general take on what most departments do?
We've seen more of a thought to go to fireground channels for the benefit that everybody on scene is going to hear you.
Right.
Definitely. And it comes back to the bosses out in the front yard. They've got to carry 2 radios now. That's just something different they never had to do before. You've got to carry 2 radios, one to talk dispatch and one to talk on a fireground.
But the technology is there that one radio could scan and do both if you wanted it to, or no?
You could, but that would lead you to an absolute mess of trying to switch between frequencies. And you're going to have one, whatever set is your priority. If you're on dispatch as your priority at scanning, you're not going to hear fireground. So you have to have that second radio that's on that fireground channel and another radio on your dispatch channel. There's no really way around it. Scan, yes, it would listen to it, but you'd wind up missing conversations. Okay. Without a doubt.
And so, and this kind of goes along with the Mayday stuff. So let's say I give a Mayday, right? And yeah, sure. In the city, we got all our 10 codes and they're going to call additional resources. But here I am in a small, medium city. I want to buff the job, or, hey, I hear a Mayday and we want to start heading out, right? But if you're on a fireground, you're probably not going to hear what the fireground's going on, or what's going on in the fireground. So what is a reasonable workaround for the department that says, hey, we want a point-to-point on the fireground. We don't want to deal with repeaters, for our main fireground communications, but we do want to be able to monitor fireground communication from further away. What's the hardware technology needed to make something like that happen?
You would use a vehicular repeater at that point. Okay. And that would be set to your fireground channel, whatever it would be. And then that would be slave to your rig radio, and that rig radio would be turned to your dispatch channel, whatever channel you have set up for repeating that.
Okay.
And it would take your fireground audio, send it back out, and vice versa. Whatever audio comes in also goes back out too.
Okay, so that's where that could go. So that is possible. It's just you need some more
different extra equipment.
Yeah. Okay.
Put in line with it.
Sorry, we went on Mayday. All right. So you kind of mentioned a little bit before, and I know you probably have your opinions, but radio pockets, radio strap, operational versus transmit, ability to transmit.
I've always had a radio strap, and I'm one of the few people I think that actually hangs mine out the bottom of the coat, just for the fact that, this is getting into the slide of the nerd level of things, but your antennas are vertically polarized. So that means they like to be vertical. So if you're crawling around, you have it horizontal, your signals are going to be going up and down instead of left and right. So for myself, I let it hang out my bottom of the coat. So if I am down, it will swing to the proper position. That's just, and it also gets it outside the coat as well.
Is there a downside of that to exposing it to the elements, or?
I don't really think it matters at that point. If that's melting, I probably have more problems on my hand.
Not even melting water.
Oh, well, they're all immersion rated. All new radios are
Okay.
immersion rated and Haslock. So they're
Okay.
immersion rated up to, I think it's 3 meters for 60 minutes,
Okay.
give or take. Don't absolutely quote me on those numbers, but they're immersion rated. They can take water.
Okay. And then, I mean, someone will, and there's a lot, again, there's a lot of opinions out there. Someone mentioned, what about it being a snag hazard? But again, I think everyone has to do what works for them. What's the downside of using the radio pocket on the chest, do you think? I mean, because that's what they're dubbed for. So,
right. As long as that pocket is up high enough, the key is always getting the antenna away from your body. That's the key, because keeping that antenna next to your body is going to degrade your signal. So getting it up high, getting it above the shoulder, you'll see speaker mics with antennas on them. That's getting that antenna and that signal away from your body, which helps in turn for you to receive and transmit. If you notice you're having in your holster, it's swinging in your strap. If you pull it away from your body, say you hear a scratchy signal come in, you just pull it away from your body a little bit, that signal magically gets better because you're getting it away from your body. So that's one other feature that it helps with, is if you're getting shitty signal, maybe you could pull it away from your body a little bit and get a better signal.
does the water resistance rating pertain to the speaker mics as well?
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
And
Those and the speaker mics are fire rated as well. They can withstand temperatures
That's what I was
for
gonna ask.
such period of time.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen them melt at all or not really? I mean,
The ones unless I give them to you,
Well,
sure, you
that-
usually melt those.
the fire rated ones we have not. The non-fire rated one we did.
No, I haven't seen them melted, and if they probably were melted, I doubt the individual came out.
Yeah, you got bigger issues.
If your speaker mic is melting, you've got way bigger issues on your hands. And I've heard plenty of people say that too. These mics are great and all. They actually, Harris has a radio now that can survive what we can survive in a fire. It's rated to temperatures that I don't think I'd be in there at that point. But the speaker mics are rated for that, and more rated for the abuse too, because we're constantly beating them up. So that's another thing. Not only they're rated for the fire side, they're rated for the abuse side, which is more so, I think, what comes into play with the production and design of them.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back. I probably should have made a few more notes on the Mayday part, but there's a couple more things I wanted to address there. So we talked about the tones and identification, but when we talk about identification, we all know that Maydays usually happen when there's a lot of radio traffic. So how are we identifying the person that hit the Mayday as someone else, right? So if I hear the beacon, by the time I get to my radio, probably 10 other people have already keyed up their mic.
You can hold that for a
so
set period of time.
is that programming or?
That's a programming feature. You can set that as a hold.
So talk about what that means and stuff.
So you can set that, that emergency message, you can set on a hold for a set period of time before that message, that screen clears and goes back to its regular operation. I think maybe usually I set mine for like 15 seconds on the radios. That way it gives time to look down, see who it is before the people obviously start keying up and ruining, making you lose where that was.
And if you do lose it, can you scroll back?
You can scroll back through. You can go into that screen and scroll back. You also have audio playback as well now too. You can go in and hit the audio playback button, and it'll give you however many every program it in the last transmissions. You can go back and instantly replay those messages back.
Okay, and then I mean, are you a fan of the Mayday button in general, or do you think it's a waste? Or
no, I think it's definitely a good thing because it gets people hopefully to be quiet.
Okay.
I know it doesn't work all the time, but at least it gets the notification out there. Hey, maybe I should be quiet for the next period of time because maybe my message isn't that important compared to what's about to go on.
What about, I know we have it in the city. Do you program anywhere it boosts the wattage when you hit it?
No, because the city programming at the 2 watts is just a city programming thing. Every radio we program is whatever the max wattage is. It's that all time. Radios are set to whatever they're allowed to, whatever they're programmed to, or designed to. I should say we program into that exact specification. Okay,
and then so someone here is asking. I mean, I guess it's an opinion question. So for their radio. When you call a Mayday on the non-repeated fire ground, You hit the the emergency button, it alerts and automatically goes. So this one does, he's saying his automatically goes to the fire dispatch channel and maintains an open mic for about 45 seconds.
Yeah, you can do a hot mic on that. Yeah, it's a programming feature as well that you hit that button. Now it holds your mic open. The theory is behind that if you hit your alert button, you can't key it up. It holds your mic open for a set period of time. So you can yell, talk into it without having to worry about keying the button.
Oh, and he's mentioning now this is more on the EMS side. So they run EMS. So if they do that, it's only for EMS. So it's the idea is that you would hit it, it would revert to its dispatch. So then you could talk for 45 seconds and the dispatcher hear you, I guess. I guess that's an interesting.
You can most radios you can program in multiple audio personalities and emergency personalities, depending on what channel it's on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's see what else. We talked about how to radio, so recording. So one of the best company drills I've done, is just listening to past fires. So it's something we do have the ability to do. I believe each battalion chief has a recorder. But so if a department says, hey, we're on a talk around frequency, we don't have repeated, but we do want to record our on-scene communications, what can they do?
Yeah, we use a company called Eventide. They make a tactical mobile repeater or mobile recorder, I should say. And that allows you, it's slave to, you put it to a radio, whatever channel that radio's on is what it's going to listen to. You tie it into your MDT, which is tied into your modem, and it records it. And also, if you wanted to, you could actually log into it. Say you're a staff chief responding in, you want to listen to what's going on. You can actually log into it through the web, and you can listen to your fire ground audio, and it's all recorded, and you can pull that all off the web as you want to for training purposes or for emergency purpose.
So it can actually be web-based too. It doesn't.
It's web-based. Yep, it actually has its own IP address, and you log into it to see it.
Okay, nice. All right, and then it records automatically on the cloud or whatever, so you could go back in there and.
Yep. Yeah, it records to the cloud, or it actually records on the unit itself too.
Okay.
So it's actually in two places.
So you mentioned MDT. So what are MDTs doing these days?
MDTs, we're seeing the shift from everybody went to the iPads for a while. We're seeing the shift back to regular computers like the Panasonic CF33 tablet. People are shifting back to that because they're running bigger programs now. I'm not at all a software person by any means. I'm just from seeing what my customers do, they're shifting back to actual computers because of the size and complexity of the programs they're buying and purchasing. That's where they're going back to, either putting them into a modem or just using embedded 4G or 5G air card in it, and it being its own standalone unit.
And what are departments using MDTs for?
They're using it for their obviously dispatch stuff. They're mapping, doing the building inspections. They're pretty much using it for everything you use it at your desk for, and then some. With the new tablets, you can actually take it out of the rig with you, go do a building inspection with it, and put it right back in the rig. With the docking station, and it gives it power and gives you your antenna ports so you can get better signal.
Are they, and you're using it instead of talking on the radio?
Some departments do, not many. A lot of them are just using it to get the information. Not many that we have are using it actual with hotkeys for saying they're on scene or they're in service or giving signals like that.
What about GPS for them or other companies, so they see who's responding in what direction?
Yeah, and that goes back into your dispatch software, your CAD program. We'll take all that information and put it in there.
So you'll integrate. So if I come to you and say, hey, I want an MDT for my apparatus and I want it to integrate with dispatch, is that something you take care of?
Yep. Yeah, that's actually that's my father's side of the house. He does all the dispatch consoles and the dispatch software and stuff like that. But yeah, that can all be integrated into, and you can see exactly where all your units are at the same time.
Is that something a lot are doing or no?
Yeah, we see a lot of people doing it. It's just to be able to know where your units are is huge, and possibly reduce the response times with picking the proper companies who are closest to the box.
Okay. So what are some big projects you've done lately? Anything out of the ordinary, anything that you thought, well, hey, this was a good idea I've never thought about, or that type of stuff?
Not so much on the fire side, but actually, yeah, we are doing communications for a company in Florida They're called Operator Solutions. They're actually the rescue element for all manned space flight. And they're using our ICOM satellite radios to give over the horizon communications back to their dispatch center. So they're PJs, all current and former. And when the rocket goes up, if they have to abort the mission, these guys are responsible for from Cape Canaveral all the way up past Maine to go get the capsule. So the communication provided them can give them the entire eastern seaboard for communications back to their operations center in Melbourne, Florida.
How'd they
And they have
find
all the
you?
mapping software. It's pretty cool. They have a fast boat. They've got C-130 aircraft, also has satellite communications in it. So they have positive communications no matter where they go. Pretty much anywhere in the world as we shift their coverage areas to where they go to.
How'd they find you?
Through ICOM. One of our other customers started using the satellite radios because we had a couple years ago, a tornado ripped through and the staff chiefs couldn't communicate back to the facility. And that started the process of how we can provide positive communications 100% of the time. As long as you can see the sky, it provides them communications everywhere. So if something happens in, Rhode Island, they can still have comms back here to Connecticut.
Wow. Okay. I mean, there's not a ton to necessarily talk about per se, but vehicle upfitting is the other huge part of your business. So talk about how long does it take, what goes into it? It's not just, I remember used to be this little thing, a little power supply for strobes, and that's so far gone. So I come to you and say, hey, I'm getting a new Chiefs car. What's the process? What are you asking? What questions are you asking? What goes into it?
What the intent of the vehicle is where it really starts. Are you taking it as a take-home chief ride where you want it to be as incognito as possible, yet still be able to respond with, basic communications, or return it to a full-blown battalion rig, and you need all the bells and whistles. So it really starts there. And honestly, and what you have to spend, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but it comes down to what you have to spend, because you can do a basic package that meets all your needs, or you can go all out and really do it up. But it comes down to expense, what you have to spend on it, what your budget is, and what the intent of the vehicle is, and go from there. We're a full Wayland dealer. It's all we sell. We use the Wayland core system, which picks into the vehicle's inputs, and I can tell the vehicle what to do in park, drive, day, night. We put your brakes on, your turn signal, any of those I can put into the system to make the vehicle perform the way you want it to.
So it's all computer based now. It's not.
Yeah, they're all the equipment actually has its own IP addresses. Your light bars, your inner edges, your tracers, all that stuff has all IP addresses, and it reports back to the core, and that's how it all runs now.
Now, what about electronics for like a take-home car that's going to stay outside? Is there anything that you do on either end, either EMS or fire, for stuff that's going to be, outside, not in the elements, but certainly in the variety of weather that we see?
No, everything we do is all waterproof splice on the exterior of the vehicle, or anything that's a critical component is all done with waterproof splices. Some are done with solder, crimp solder, and waterproof splice, depending on how critical the connection is. And everything I said, everything's watertight, so it can be outside for as long as it wants to be.
And obviously it depends what you're doing, but how long does a vehicle upfit take?
Let's see, like a battalion rig with multiple radios, your bed slide lights, the whole 9 yards. You're looking at between, right on 100 man hours, probably, if not more, that go into it to do it right. We strip the vehicle down completely. It usually takes about 2-3 hours to strip the entire insides of the vehicle out and put everything into the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's right. You do not just the electronics, but you do the storage, bed systems, all that stuff.
Yeah. Bed slides, your organizer boxes in the back. We do custom ones as well for compartments. So yeah, it can get lengthy, the process.
Now, obviously, you're a Kenwood Harris dealer. If the department says, "Listen, we use Motorola," you still do those vehicle outfits?
Yeah, we install Motorola radios all the time. I have a couple actually here in the Bay right now that have Motorola radios in them. That's not a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
We do plenty. We do Norcoms right up the street, and there's plenty of days they just send radios down for us to put into their customers' vehicles.
Cool. So someone has a question. What goes into updating station alerting, especially in my department, going from 1 to almost 3 career houses? Also, what's the technology available for a Kenwood system?
Updating this, it all depends on what you currently have already. A lot of places have the old Zetron boxes, the old tan ones. Those were older technology. They've gone to more IP, they've gone to an IP based system. So it all depends on what you have already and whether it can be upgraded or not. All depends on the age of it and what the infrastructure is.
So do you do stuff with station alerting?
We've done station learning before, yeah.
So talk about that technology. I didn't even know you did that. So
We do. That's more my, again, that's my, unfortunately, it's my father's side of the house. I haven't done systems, but he usually does do them. We go with Zetron. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Zetron system. That's linked into your CAD system, and the information you give the CAD is what it sends out to the stations that you select.
and does that integrate with like all the dispatching soft that integrates with everything that's out there or whatever, I guess? Okay. I'm just throwing your email, Michael3@comservices.com, SCVS.
Correct.
So I'm just going to throw your contact information in there so everyone has it if they have any questions for you after. That's a lot of the stuff we were going to talk that I had on my list. If anyone has any other questions, throw them up here or anything. I can unmute you. You can unmute yourself and ask a question live if you want as well. There's got to be other stuff, Mike. What else you got?
I don't know. We covered a good chunk of information.
We're trying to stay on the surface and kind of give everyone an idea of what you do so that we don't need to delve. Every topic that we talk about could be 4 hours, right? So we want to just kind of give an overview of what it is. Let's ask this. What are the biggest complaints you hear about radios in the industry?
The audio
it's not company specific, but
the audio.
Yep. So here I am, I have this issue. Mike, my audio sucks. When they say that, what do you say to them?
First thing is, how are you using it? It starts right there. If they say they're not putting it up to their face, well, we have a training problem. We start there. Okay. The audio still sucks there. Then we get into the programming. Obviously, at the same time, I'm going to look at the radio, read the programming, see what it looks like. But it all starts there. If they say their audio sucks, let's start there. Let's start at the ground level, and not try to go massive expensive fix. Let's start at square one and training. How are you using it? What's the program look like? And then go from there. And are you using it? Are you saying the audio isn't good going portable to portable, or is it sound shitty going through the system? So those are things we have to look at. If you're on the fireground, simplex, portable to portable, it sounds like crap. Okay, let's check and see what your radio's doing, how you're using them. If it sounds like crap going through the system, let's check your system. Let's see if the system has an inherent problem that we can address there. Because now everything's
the system.
Well, everything is IP based now, so you have that latency.
So you log in from anywhere you want.
You can log in. Some places don't allow that. You go there and check. We had a customer one time. The signal was going from their facility in Stratford, and we didn't realize that it was going up to Hartford, over to Farmington, and going 2 other places before it came back to facility. We're like, why does the audio sound like crap? Well, because it's taking so long for it to make that loop to get back to us. That was our problem. We fixed that problem. Our audio got better. So there's a lot of IP. You've just got to see where it's going.
Now, if you're using a system that's not simplex and it's repeated, what's the backup for that? If there's a power outage, I assume things are on battery.
You ever have UPSs? You have them on battery backup. You have a generator in the system. UPSs you got to check your system, at least once a year. Make sure your batteries are good. UPSs got to make sure those are up and running, and that'll help to alleviate that issue. But you always have a standalone backup as well. One repeater that's just sitting out nowhere, just being its own backup. That if the whole system crashes, you can turn this one system on or have it on already, and your comms don't fail.
You were mentioning the state system before. What is the state system? Is there advantages, disadvantages?
Yeah, the state system's a 7800 trunked P25 radio system that covers the entire state of Connecticut, managed by the state radio network. And it allows you to, if you're in Stratford and Bridgeport, you guys can talk to each other if you're on it. Just go to different talk groups. They have interoperability talk groups already set up. A lot of places have gone through it. Bridgeport switched over to it. A lot of cities that have switched to it, just because it gives you that interoperability platform that you might not usually have unless you're buying, tri-band radios and programming everybody under the sun into the radios.
So theoretically, you can buy a radio and put in everyone around you.
Oh,
or
yeah.
as many as
Yeah.
you want. Yeah.
Yeah, your
Okay.
tri-binary, your APXs, your Harris XL series, your Kenwood VP series will do tri-band, and you can program in. I think the Harris you can actually program like 12,000 different channels into it. Is the max. So you,
We're close to that. So.
if you can fill that up, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. All right. So I got a couple questions that I'm going to get back into right now. One person says, my organization uses Kenwood Viking portable radios, but it's a non-waterproof microphone and it has had several communication failures at fires because it's a waterproof microphone. What is the recommendation for a speaker microphone for
The
an
Auto
organization?
the Auto 500.
Okay, and that would be interchangeable with that or
Yep,
whatever?
that's the speaker mic you have. The Auto 500
Okay.
is a great mic. It's a solid speaker mic.
Yeah, we've had that right up in the front of the flashover simulator. We've never had an issue with that, with it. It's held up. So, someone else, we're in the process of purchasing a mobile radio for our new Marine unit. One thing I'm in favor of is purchasing a tri-band VHF UHF 7800 mobile. What is the price difference and some pros and cons of purchasing the tri-band over a dual band?
Your price difference is not that much. I think the list price is like $500 to upgrade for the extra band. So it's a minimal expense for it, and that's
when you're already at that price.
Yeah, when you're already at a couple grand, well into the $7,000. What's an additional $500?
And kind of on that note, because he put a mobile radio, but a portable radio can do everything now, right?
Mhm.
So I guess for why buy? What's the difference? Why would you have a mobile radio? Why wouldn't you just buy all portable radios?
Just because of the power, you're not going to get the same coverage. You will.
Okay.
Your mobile radios, you're pushing 50 watts of power compared to your portable, you're pushing 5 watts of power.
Oh, okay.
Big
So
difference. Yeah.
Okay. And that's, I assume, why, even though we can talk to dispatcher at work on our portables, sometimes they can't hear you quite as well.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Let's see what else. I mean, that's really the big stuff that I had, unless you have anything else you wanted to mention.
Covered everything on your list.
Definitely on my list. Some of the things I'll give you a plug, because you don't do social media. I'm sorry, your social media czar is tuning in tonight. But
yes,
for years I tried to get Mike to get on social media, because if there's anything firemen like to look at, it's flashing lights and whatnot. And sure enough, at the show, at the EMS show, everyone's walking up to the rigs that you've done. But you've done, you do a lot for New Haven. You've done their rescue. That was a unique project. So what were some of the things that you did there, other than
that one? Actually, probably the biggest thing is we actually put a TV in the back of the rig and linked it to their MDT. So in the back of the rig, they can have everything going on back there, along with dual radios or dual radio control heads, so they could actually run it almost as a command post out of the back of the rig, along with that big TV screen that's slaved to their MDT. So that was one neat little thing. I put on a big swivel and they can move it around and use it at command center if they so choose to.
So if you're starting your own fire department, which is probably not far off, but if you were starting your own fire department from scratch, how are you building out the radio system?
Well, it all depends on what your topography is, what the lay of the land is. Here in the Northeast, it's hills everywhere and trees everywhere and valleys. So our topography is probably one of the worst to try to get a system to work. Where you go down south more and it's flatter, you're going to get better coverage because there's nothing in your way compared to being up here. You don't have the massive tall buildings like we do up here, unless you're in the actual city environment down there. But it all depends on the lay of the land is where you start from.
Okay, so
to be honest with you,
let's do both. We're South 95 here in Milford. Pretty flat for the most part. I guess maybe a little hilly up north, but so what would you do there versus if I was a small rural department in Litchfield County?
Well, then you start there. You start with doing coverage maps, what your frequencies are, where you have locations, where you currently have locations for tower sites. Plug those into a computer and you start doing coverage map surveys to see where your dead spots are going to be. And you start on the computer with figuring out where your problem areas are. and going out there. And once you figure out where your problem areas are, you actually get hands on the road and you set a temporary system up and you drive and you go out there and you test the mobiles, you test the portables, you actually physically do it and not just rely on what the computer is telling you, because the coverage maps might be a little bit different than what you're getting. You might get better coverage, you might get worse coverage, you don't know, but you're spending a lot of time on the ground to do it properly and just driving around and walking around. And then do you want in-building coverage, or you just want out-of-building coverage? You want in-building coverage. Now your infrastructure is going to grow because you need to get that signal into the buildings compared to just relying on getting it outside the buildings. You just want mobile coverage. You want portable coverage as well. How are you using your portables? Actually, how you're using your portables played into figuring out your coverage survey. Are you using speaker mics and using a leather strap, which most of us do? Then you've got to build in that loss factor of the signal to make sure you're going to have coverage there, because your signal is going to be weaker coming off the side of your body than it is if you're holding the radio up to your face. So it all starts there.
Is that stuff you do, or is that something a department would hire a company to do?
They can hire a consultant too, but we do that as well. We have the software and
you have the time to drive around town.
That all gets added into the price of the job.
Just wait till your kids are old enough to drive.
Yeah, exactly. I'll put them to work.
Cell phones, do cell phones integrate into radio systems?
You can now. You actually can integrate. All the companies have their own little systems. Motorola, Harris, would have cell systems. The Harris and the Motorola, you can actually put a cell card into it. You can actually have data in your radio. So if you go out of your coverage area and you have cell coverage, the radio knows to switch over to the cell and still send that audio over the cell network now back to your repeater and send it back out again.
What I'm getting at it tonight is, if you want to do something, ask, because there's probably a way to do it, and don't think that like the technology doesn't exist.
The technology far exceeds what we use on a daily basis.
Especially in the fire service, I would assume,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Your industrial settings, your commercial settings, they might use more of it because they do more of tracking and messaging and things like that. But in the fire service, yeah, the radios far exceed what we would use on a daily basis.
I mean, how good is the tracking? We're all, walking around with a brick for, an SCBA pack tracker. Are the radios the ticket to tracking, guys, in a
Well,
Mayday?
it's GPS based on some of the radios, so that's not going to work. Some are doing Bluetooth. Kenwood does have a system. If it's a fixed site, you can put Bluetooth panels throughout the building, and you can actually track a radio throughout a building.
But that's if you know what building you're going to.
Fixed-based system.
So
I mean, you could theoretically do that on a fire ground by putting panels up all over the place and tracking with Bluetooth. Yes, that's theoretically possible, but who's going around setting up Bluetooth panels?
We can't even get guys to set up smoke blockers. Never mind. Bluetooth
What are those?
I saw someone on here knows exactly. So, all right. Well, definitely a lot to digest there. So I think it's a good, it's a good introduction to some of the technology that's out there. If no one else has any other questions, I don't really have too much else to cover. For me, it was good to kind of get it out there to, just so guys realize what's out there, instead of, I guess what I see a lot of, not on the radio side, are guys thinking that they have to live with something, and it could be anything. It could be gear they don't like, SCBA they don't like, a truck they don't like, where there are options out there and you don't have to necessarily live with it. Now
there are the main three put out great products. It's all on what you want to use. The money you have to spend is what it comes down to. But Motorola, Harris, Kenwood, they all put out great products. They all have their high points and some in their low points. But
I think the big thing too is the service on it. And what you said, how much there is involved. It's not just putting a battery in it and turning it on, but tuning it and making sure
there's a lot of personal time involved with getting things squared away, because at the end of the day, it's could be my friends or my guys. And each customer turns out to be a friend. Those are our guys that are going to work, and we want to make sure if their system fails, it's on me. Right.
So, all right, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. If anyone else has any questions, please put them up. I'll retype Mike's information. So, if you have a question, you want to reach out to him direct, He's very accessible. He'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Mike, you guys have a website or?
We do, yeah. It's that comservices.com.
All right, so I'll throw that in there as well. And we're gonna put let me just comservices.com. So we're gonna do comservices.com. So I'll throw that up there if I can find it. Do I have to spell it out?
No, yeah, same as the email address there.
Oh, okay.
QMMSVCS.com.
Oh, okay. All right. Sounds good. So I'll get that up there. And then in the meantime, and you're located out of Seymour, so you're pretty local. I know you guys, you've picked up stuff before. You have people drop stuff off. You do on-site, whatever you need. So I'll throw that up there. And then we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks for our next seminar. And then in the meantime, we also have the South Windsor Rescue Weekend in April. We still have some availability for that. So just go to my website if you want to see that. And again, anything you guys need, please reach out to me. If you know someone that wanted to watch this and was working, it'll be on YouTube the next couple days. After I get my haircut tomorrow, Mike's got the first appointment, and then I'm right out.
Yeah, I'm good.
But guys, thanks for joining. Nice, short and sweet, an hour tonight. So you get out, and thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Thanks Mike.
Dan.
Appreciate it.